What you're about to see isn't magic. It isn't luck. It's a calculated, pressurized, brutally precise procedure that turns raw, unrecognizable metal into the most trusted store of wealth on the planet. But here's what nobody tells you. Every single coin that reaches your hand survived a process that rejected hundreds before it. And the ones that didn't make it, you'll never know they existed. So the real question isn't how a coin is made. The real question is, what does it take to be the one that makes it through? Now, welcome back, everyone. This is John A.G., and you're watching your OG John A.G. Now, before we go any further, I want to speak directly to someone. If you've been around long enough to remember when a phone call meant actually walking to the phone, if you've lived through enough economic cycles to know that what goes up always has a story behind it, then friend, this channel was built for you. Hit that subscribe button. Not for me, but for that younger version of yourself who wished someone had explained how wealth actually works before it was too late to act on it. One click. That's all it takes. Now, tell me something. Where in the world are you watching this from right now? Drop your city, your country, your time zone in the comments below, because this community stretches further than you'd believe. And I want to know exactly how far. There is a moment that happens in every generation. A moment when the noise gets too loud, when the numbers on screens stop making sense, when people stop trusting what they cannot touch and start reaching for what they can hold in their hands. That moment is happening right now. Somewhere in the world today, a businessman is sitting at his desk. He has accounts, he has portfolios, he has digital assets spread across multiple platforms. On paper, he looks wealthy. On paper, everything looks fine. But he hasn't slept well in weeks, because somewhere in the back of his mind, a quiet voice keeps asking the same question. What happens if the screen goes dark? He's not alone. Across trading floors, across family offices, across the quiet conversations that serious investors have behind closed doors, the same question is being asked. And more, the answer being reached is the same. Get something real, get something physical, get something that cannot be deleted. This is not panic, this is not fear-driven behavior, this is pattern recognition. And the pattern is old, older than any stock market, older than any digital currency, older even than most of the financial systems the modern world takes for granted. When economies shake, and they always shake eventually, human beings return to the same anchors: gold, silver, metal you can weigh, metal you can verify, metal that has held its value across thousands of years of civilizations rising and falling. The Perth Mint understands this better than almost any institution on Earth, because the Perth Mint has been operating since 1899. It has outlasted wars. It has outlasted recessions. It has outlasted governments, currencies, and financial systems that were once considered unshakable. And today, it remains one of the most respected precious metal minting facilities in the entire world. But here is where the story gets interesting. Recent demand data has revealed something that many casual observers missed entirely. In some of the largest consumer markets on the planet, investment bars and coins have been quietly taking market share away from jewelry. Think about what that means. When people buy jewelry, they are buying beauty, they are buying sentiment, they are buying something to wear, to gift, to display. But when people shift toward investment coins and bars instead, they are no longer buying beauty. They are buying security. They are making a deliberate economic decision. They are saying, with their wallets, that they believe physical metal is a more reliable store of wealth than whatever else is available to them at that moment. That shift is not small. That shift is a signal. And experienced investors know how to read signals. Now consider the other side of this equation. When demand for physical metal rises, two forces are set in motion simultaneously. First, mints like Perth face enormous pressure to produce more, faster, at higher volume, without sacrificing the precision that makes their coins trusted in the first place. Second, and this is the part most people never think about, counterfeiters get to work. Because wherever serious money flows, dishonest people follow. The more valuable a coin becomes, the more attractive it becomes to fake. And the more sophisticated the fakers become, the more sophisticated the authentic minting procedure must become in response. Manufacturing and security do not operate separately. They move together, like gears inside the same machine. One cannot advance without the other advancing alongside it. This is why understanding how a coin is actually produced is not merely interesting. It is strategically essential for the investor who wants to buy with confidence, for the entrepreneur who wants to understand what real quality control looks like, for the businessman who wants to know why certain institutions have survived for over a century, while others have disappeared without a trace. A finished coin looks simple. It is round, it is shiny, it fits in the palm of your hand. But what that coin went through to get there is anything but simple. And that story starts in a place most people would never expect. Nobody talks about this part. Every documentary shows the shining finished coin. Every advertisement shows the gleaming final product. Every investor holds the polished piece in their hand and assumes it arrived that way. It did not. Long before the coin exists, the metal does not look like money. It does not feel like money. It does not behave like money. It arrives at the Perth Mint in forms that most people would walk past without a second glance. Heavy, rough, industrial. In some cases, it arrives as thick logs of compressed metal. In others, as large billets, dense rectangular blocks that carry enormous weight and zero elegance. There is nothing glamorous about this stage, and that is precisely what makes it fascinating. Because what happens in these early hours of the process determines everything that comes after. Think of it this way. A master architect does not begin with the finished building. He begins with raw land, uneven, unmeasured, full of problems that have not yet been discovered. The Perth Mint begins the same way. The raw metal that arrives on the production floor is full of problems that have not yet been solved. Inconsistent thickness, microscopic impurities, structural tension locked deep inside the metal itself. Tension that, if ignored, will surface later at the worst possible moment. And this is where the first great lesson of the minting procedure reveals itself. You cannot build precision on an imprecise foundation. Every elite institution in the world understands this principle. Not just mints, banks, aerospace manufacturers, pharmaceutical companies. The ones that last, the ones that earn and keep global trust, are the ones that refuse to cut corners at the foundation stage. Perth Mint has been proving this since 1899. So what actually happens to that rough industrial metal when it first enters the facility? The process begins with rolling. The thick metal, whether it arrived as a log, a billet, or another raw industrial form, is fed through a series of powerful rolling machines. These machines apply calculated controlled pressure across the entire surface of the metal. Slowly, methodically, the thickness begins to reduce. The metal stretches, it flattens. It begins to take on the long, continuous sheet form that the production process requires. But here's something that most people never consider. Metal does not like being reshaped. When pressure is applied to metal, when it is forced to flatten, stretch, and conform to new dimensions, something happens inside its molecular structure. The metal hardens. It becomes resistant. In engineering terms, this is called work hardening. And if it is not addressed directly, it will make the metal brittle, unpredictable, and ultimately unusable for precision coin production. This is where annealing enters the story. Annealing is a heat treatment process, and in the context of coin production, it is one of the most quietly important steps in the entire procedure. After the metal has been rolled and work hardened, it is carefully heated to a precise temperature inside a controlled furnace environment. This heat does something remarkable. It releases the internal tension that built up during rolling. It softens the molecular structure. It returns the metal to a state of workability, ready to be shaped further without cracking, splitting, or behaving unpredictably under pressure. The Perth Mint performs this step with the kind of precision that cannot be rushed, because rushed annealing produces inconsistent results. And inconsistent results at this stage mean wasted metal, failed blanks, and ultimately, coins that will never exist. Now the metal moves forward in a new form, long, continuous coils, thin, uniform strips of gold or silver wound carefully onto massive industrial reels. Modern thickness control systems, laser-guided, computer-monitored, measure the metal continuously as it moves through the facility. Not approximately, not close enough, exactly, because a coin that is even fractions of a millimeter too thick or too thin will fail. Not at the end of the process. Right here, before it ever becomes anything at all. The strip moves forward. The cutting machines are waiting, and somewhere inside that long, gleaming coil of precisely rolled metal are thousands of coins that do not yet know they exist. But only some of them will survive what comes next. There is a sound that echoes through the Perth Mint production floor. It is not loud in the way explosions are loud. It is not dramatic in the way movies make it seem. It is rhythmic, calculated, relentless. It is the sound of a coin being born. And it happens hundreds of times, every single minute. But before that sound is ever made, before a single blank ever meets a die, there is a stage that separates world-class mints from ordinary ones. A stage that happens in silence. A stage that most people never see, and almost nobody talks about. The blanks have been cut. They are circular, uniform, precise in diameter. But they are not ready. Not yet. Because a blank fresh from the cutting machine carries something invisible on its surface. Microscopic burrs, tiny stress marks left behind by the cutting process. Edges that are technically correct in measurement, but not yet correct in character. And character, in the world of precision coin production, is everything. So the blanks enter what is called the burnishing process. They are loaded, sometimes thousands at a time, into large rotating barrels filled with small steel balls and carefully selected cleaning solutions. The barrel turns, the steel balls tumble, and through that controlled, continuous motion, something quietly remarkable happens. The rough edges soften, the microscopic imperfections begin to smooth. The surface of each blank begins to develop the kind of finish that will later allow a die to transfer its design with absolute clarity. Think about what is actually happening here. Thousands of individual blanks, each one a future coin, each one carrying potential value, are being tumbled together in a machine. And yet, when they emerge, each one is treated as if it is the only one. Inspected individually, weighed precisely, measured against tolerances that allow almost no margin for error. The ones that pass move forward. The ones that do not are pulled from the line without hesitation. No exceptions, no second chances. This is the philosophy that has kept the Perth Mint relevant for over a century. Not sentiment, not tradition for tradition's sake. Standard. An uncompromising, non-negotiable standard that applies equally to every single blank that moves through the facility, regardless of volume, regardless of deadline, regardless of how much demand is pressing down from the outside world. And that standard is about to face its greatest test. Because now, the blanks meet the dies. A die is not simply a stamp. A die is an engineering achievement. Each die used at the Perth Mint is precision machined from hardened steel. The design it carries, whether it is the face of a monarch, the image of a kangaroo, or the intricate pattern of a bullion series, is not drawn onto the die. It is cut into it, microscopically, methodically, with tolerances measured in microns. Units so small that the human eye cannot distinguish them without magnification. The creation of a single die can take days, because a die is not just carrying a design. A die is carrying the entire identity of the coin it will produce, every line, every depth, every raised surface and recessed detail that will later catch light and confirm authenticity. Begins inside that hardened steel die, and a flawed die produces flawed coins, thousands of them, before anyone realizes what went wrong. Now the press enters the story, and here is where most people assume the drama begins. It does not. The drama was everything that came before. The press is simply where the outcome is revealed. The blank is positioned between two dies, upper and lower. In a fraction of a second, the press descends. The force applied is not gentle. It is not approximate. On certain coin types, the striking pressure reaches levels that would be difficult to comprehend without witnessing it directly. That force drives the metal of the blank into every microscopic detail of the die, not most of the detail, all of it. The metal flows. It fills. It conforms completely to the engineered geography of the die surface. And then, in that same fraction of a second, it stops. What emerges from between those dies is no longer a blank. It is a coin. Carrying every line, the die was engineered to transfer. Carrying the weight that was calculated from the very first rolling pass. Carrying the surface finish that began in a tumbling barrel and ended under pressure that most materials could not survive. But the press is not the final word. Because a coin that looks perfect and a coin that is perfect are not always the same thing. Every struck coin moves immediately into inspection. Human eyes, optical systems, weight verification, edge examination. The ones that pass carry something the rejects never will. Not just a design, not just a finish, a guarantee. The kind of guarantee that comes only from a procedure that refused to compromise, at every single stage, from raw metal to finished strike. And yet, even a perfectly produced coin faces one final threat. A threat that does not come from inside the mint. It comes from outside it. And it is growing. There is a war being fought right now. It does not make headlines. It does not appear on the evening news. There are no uniforms, no declared sides, no formal announcements. But it is real. And the stakes are measured in gold. Every time a mint like Perth produces a coin of genuine value, somewhere in a workshop that has no business existing, someone is studying that coin, weighing it, measuring it, photographing every angle under magnification, asking one question with complete focus and zero conscience. How close can we get? This is not a new problem. Counterfeiting is as old as currency itself. The moment human beings agreed that certain objects carried value, other human beings began figuring out how to fake those objects. But something has changed in recent years, something that makes the current era of counterfeiting fundamentally different from anything that came before it. The technology available to counterfeiters today is not primitive. It is not crude. It is sophisticated, accessible, and improving at a pace that would have been unimaginable 2 decades ago. Consider what modern counterfeiters now have access to. Precision casting equipment that can replicate dimensions to fractions of a millimeter. Chemical processes that can mimic surface finishes with disturbing accuracy. tungsten cores wrapped in thin layers of genuine gold, designed specifically to fool basic density tests that most investors rely on. The old methods of verification, weight, size, basic visual inspection are no longer sufficient. They were never sufficient against a determined, sophisticated operation. And today, those operations are more determined and more sophisticated than ever before. This is why the Perth Mint does not treat security as a separate department. Security at Perth is not a layer added on top of the production process. It is woven into the production process. From the very first rolling pass to the final inspection before a coin leaves the facility, every single stage of the procedure carries within it deliberate engineered features designed to make replication not just difficult, but practically impossible. Here is where the strategic thinking becomes genuinely impressive. The Perth Mint embeds security at multiple levels simultaneously. At the surface level, there are features the naked eye can appreciate. Fine line patterns. Microtext so small it requires magnification to read. Edge reading. The ridged pattern around a coin's circumference, engineered to precise specifications that vary by denomination and series. Below the surface level, there are features that go deeper. Laser frosted backgrounds that create the distinctive proof finish, a finish that requires equipment and expertise far beyond what a counterfeiting operation can realistically maintain at scale. And at the deepest level, there are features that are not publicly disclosed at all, because the moment a security feature is fully explained, it begins losing its effectiveness. Think about what this means from a purely strategic perspective. The Perth Mint is not simply manufacturing coins, it is manufacturing trust. And trust, in the precious metals market, is the most valuable commodity of all. An investor who holds a Perth Mint coin is not just holding gold or silver. They are holding the institutional credibility of an organization that has been building and defending that credibility since 1899. That credibility cannot be replicated, not by a casting machine, not by a chemical process, not by the most sophisticated counterfeiting operation currently in existence. But here is the warning that this entire story has been building toward. And it is a warning directed specifically at the business community, at the aspiring entrepreneur, at the serious investor who is paying attention. The existence of sophisticated counterfeits in the market is not just a problem for individual buyers. It is a systemic risk, because every fake coin that successfully enters circulation quietly erodes the confidence that makes physical metal valuable in the first place. If investors cannot trust what they are holding, they stop holding it. And when they stop holding it, the entire case for physical metal as a wealth anchor begins to fracture. This is why authentication is no longer optional knowledge for serious market participants. It is a core competency. The investor who cannot verify what they own is not really an investor. They are a target. And the market has never been more full of targets than it is right now. Because right now, more people are entering the precious metal space than at almost any point in recent memory. Many of them are new. Many of them are trusting. Many of them are making decisions based on price charts and YouTube thumbnails without ever asking the question that actually matters. Is what I am holding real? The Perth Mint's answer to that question is built into every coin it produces, layer by layer, stage by stage, from raw metal to finished strike, to the security features that cannot be copied, to the institutional guarantee that cannot be faked. That is not just manufacturing. That is a century of earned trust, compressed into an object, small enough to hold in one hand, and strong enough to outlast almost everything else in your portfolio. The question is no longer whether physical metal matters. The question is whether you understand it well enough to protect yourself in a market that is growing faster than most new participants realize. Because the coins are getting better. The fakes are getting better too. And the only thing standing between a serious investor and a very expensive mistake is knowledge. Know what you own, know how it was made, know what makes it real. Because in this market, the ones who know are the ones who keep what they earn.